Welcome back to Aunt Debbie's Boutique. If you're new to the channel, it would probably be helpful if you would watch the introduction video. I'll link it in the description box below. Every Saturday we put out a video that has a very simple project to sew. Most of these patterns have been tested on children as young as 10 years old. Then on Wednesday, we have a video that's a little bit more challenging that's usually related to the one we did on Saturday. And that's just to learn some more advanced skills for those of you who are ready. But it certainly is you're not expected as a beginner to know how to do those things. So learn to sew at your own pace. Today we are going to make this wonderful burp rag for a baby gift. Our next few weeks are going to be spent making baby gifts. And we're going to make a coordinating set. And if you can see, this one has nice fabric on the front with a cute little duck applique. Can you see the duck? And on the back, it has terry cloth. And the reason we put terry cloth on there was so it would be absorbent. If we just had 2 layers of fabric, it wouldn't be very absorbent and it wouldn't really do the job it was meant to do. So we want it not only to be aesthetically pleasing, but we also want it to be functional. So I prefer terry cloth, but you can also use flannel or any kind of fluffy fabric that's more absorbent than just a piece of cotton. Okay, let's get started. You can buy the pattern on my Etsy shop, AuntDebbiesBoutique.com, at my Etsy shop, and it is $2.50. And it includes all these patterns and pictures, step-by-step pictures of how to sew this. I also have kits available that not only include the pattern and all the instructions, but it includes all the pieces and they're already cut out for you. And the reason I do that is it's mainly for children. Children have a difficult time cutting out at first. That's the hardest thing for them, and that's what frustrates them the most. So I always start my kids off by cutting out the patterns for them. As they get older, they want to sew some more, they're going to learn how to cut something out. They'll pick that up on their own. So I like to make it easy for them, and so they only have to do the fun part until they're ready to do the other. And it's good for adults too. I find that adults, they're not so much afraid of cutting something out, although sometimes they are, as they are so intimidated by a fabric store. It's overwhelming if you haven't been sewing for long. So that's the purpose for my kits. It's just to make it easier for you if you want to make some of these items. And if you ever have a special request for a kit, I just go through my fabrics and pick out some things I like. And believe me, I have a lifetime supply of fabric. So I pick out some fabrics I like for a particular item, and I try to make a neutral one, a gender neutral, whatever we're doing. And I try to make one that's a little more girlish and one that's a little more boyish. But that's not always the case, but I try to have 3 options available. And you just have to check my store because they change after, with time. When somebody buys one and I run out of that fabric, then I find some other fabrics. Okay. Okay, let's get started. What we're going to need is our pattern pieces, and this is the piece for the background, and this is the piece for our duck that we're going to applique on there. If you want to make your own piece, It is about 7.5 inches at its widest point here. And it's about 18.5 across here. And about 5.5 across here. Okay, the first thing we're going to do, let's first look at what all we need. We need two pieces of fabric, your front and your back, that are 8 width and 18 in length. Now I've gone ahead and cut out the back to save us some time. We want to fold them down to where they're almost a square, fold it in half. And then we're going to, where it says place on fold, we're going to put that right there. Uh-oh, sticking out over the edge. Need to bring it in a little more and center it on this piece of fabric. And I'm going to quickly cut this out now, not cutting on the fold line. All right, let's take our pins out. And we didn't have to mark it with chalk first like we've been doing. That's the only reason we ever do that is if we need that chalk line later for something, and we don't. So we just use the pattern and cut by it. Okay, here's our front. And here's our absorbent back. Now you want to be careful if you have directional fabric and make sure you have the right direction up here for when we put our duck on. You don't want to put the duck on and the fabric behind it be upside down. Okay, let's work on our applique. An applique is when you attach a picture or, well, it's a picture of some sort to another piece of fabric and you stitch it in place. For design, quilters do a lot of applique. You see appliques on children's clothes a lot. Now, to make sure our duck is going the same direction, it doesn't really matter. In this case, a duck can point either direction. But if I had some words that I was using, those letters would have to go a certain direction. But to make sure, we're going to flip this upside down. Now, if you can't see it on the back of your pattern, if it didn't print dark enough, you can just go over the front of it with a Sharpie and then flip it over like I did, and you can see it very well. Now we're going to trace off 3 different parts. We're first going to trace the duck, the body of the duck. Okay, now we want to trace his wing. We want to leave some space there. This piece of heat and bond isn't quite as big as 6 by 6, but in the kits they will be bigger. And then we want to trace his bill. we're done with him for right now. Now, take a pair of scissors, not your fabric scissors, because you don't want to cut through paper with fabric. And we're going to cut these out with about 1/4 inch extra around them. That's why we needed some space between the duck and the wing there. Okay, now then, we're going to flip all of our fabrics over. And that's why we had to flip our pattern over, is because this is going to be ironed to the back side of our fabric. And I'm going to strategically kind of put this wing on there so I get a little bit of the chevron pattern on it. And I ironed all these pieces and put a little starch on them before I started. I use this kind of starch. It's called Best Press. This is a lavender scent. I put it in my own bottle because I buy it by the gallon. But you can get it at any fabric store or off Amazon, and I'll link it below. But it's not a heavy starch. It's a real light one, and it comes in different scents and no scented. Okay, let's get our ironing board out. Iron may have turned off. And you need to follow the directions on the instructions that come with the Wonder Under or the Heat and Bond. But basically, they say to hold it down until it fuses and not to use steam. So I'm not going to use any steam on it. My iron's just now heating up again, so I'm having to hold it a little longer than usual. You would think I would remember to heat my iron up before I started one of these classes, but I don't. Okay. Now that they're on there, I'm not sure that's on. That iron's not hot enough yet. You want it on the cotton setting. Okay, it's hot enough that it's steaming, so it should be. And you really don't want to do this, even though I have been. You want to hold it just in place and move it. Because if it's not quite adhered, you don't want to move it around. Now I'm going to cut out each piece. And again, I'm using my paper scissors because it probably wouldn't hurt if you only are going to use it once or twice, cut through this once or twice to use your good scissors. But if you're going to do a lot of cutting through paper like this, I'd recommend you not use your good scissors. It just dulls them a whole lot faster. And if you're wanting to put your own applique on something different than a duck, you want a cute little animal or just something simple, I recommend looking through children's coloring books, because a lot of times they have some real simple pictures in there that you can use for an applique. Now, I drew this one. Not that I'm the best artist, but I worked on it for a while and finally got it to look like a duck, or kind of. So because I don't want any copyright infringement for putting it on my patterns. Okay. Now then, we have our duck, we have our bill, and we have our wing. I'm going to pull out just the top piece. We don't want to use the terry cloth just yet. And we want to peel off the backs of these, but we want to make sure that the glue sticks to our fabric. If you can see, it's kind of shiny. I don't know if you can see that, but that means the glue stick. And this side now feels like wax paper. Sometimes they're a little hard to get started, but if you'll kind of fold it, a lot of times that'll help. Except when you're trying to demonstrate it. There we go. Got it started. Okay, I'm going to center mine. You can put it anywhere you want, but I'm going to center mine, or what looks centered to me, right down here, about 2 inches from the bottom. Okay. Now with a hot iron, once you've got it where you want it, you want to put your iron on it again and just hold it in place. I don't know, 10 seconds or something like that. I should have looked on the instructions, but I just do it till I know it's been adhered good. Okay. I'm going to take my pattern now and kind of look to where I would want the eye, and I'm just going to put a little dot right there so I know that that's where I want to stitch an eye. Now we're going to take it over to the machine, and there's 2 ways you can do this. You can either just stitch a straight stitch close to the edge, but you want to make sure you stay on your duck. And you don't want too far in because it'll start to fray after it's washed. Or the way I prefer to do it is a small zigzag stitch. And then if you go off a little bit, it doesn't hurt. You're off and on, you know, just as long as you trace all the way around it, go all the way around your wing and your bill. So let's go over to the sewing machine and do that. Okay, I'm going to set my stitch length at about 2 and my zigzag width at about 1. So it's going to be a tiny little stitch. And I'm going to start it here right inside the bill. And you have to go really slow on this. Now, I will say that for a child, this might be a little too challenging. I have not done an applique this intricate with children before, but I've done the burp rag many times. So they may want to just leave the applique off. Or they may want an adult to help them. I'm going around this and I'm trying to stay mostly on the duck. And we have to pivot with our needle down, lifting our presser foot on this, just like with other projects. Okay, we have our duck stitched on there. But now I want to put the eye on. And I am just going to change my thread real quick and put on black thread. I'm not even going to change my bobbin because it's not going to show for this little bitty eye. All right, I've got my black thread on, and I'm just going to start just a little bit. Can you see that? Above the dot I put on there. And I'm going to stitch forward a little bit and then backwards in the same place, and then I'm going to kind of move over and do forwards and backwards a little bit. Okay. And there's our eye. Now let's take it back over to the ironing board. Okay. Now I want to steam it real good because we don't need that glue to hold anymore. Now, one thing you can do, and I forgot to mention this, is when you're stitching it, and this is really a good idea, when you're stitching it, to put a piece of just typing paper, printer paper, underneath it, and it will make it, if you're having trouble getting your applique to lay smooth, that will help it lay a little smoother, and then you just tear the paper off the back. Okay. Maybe I'll remember to demonstrate that on the next video. We're going to put right sides together now with our back. I'm going to flip it over so I can see this side. And I'm going to pin this all the way around, except I'm going to leave a little spot right over here on the side where it's flat, about a 3-inch gap, because that terry cloth's pretty heavy and bulky. And we're not going to sew right there. That's where we're going to turn the fabric. And you'll notice that most of this is lining up pretty well with the back, but there it's a little bit sticking out and maybe a little bit at the top. When we sew, we're going to follow our fabric. It's probably more accurate. This terry cloth's a little harder to to cut out real smoothly. So if there's a little bit of difference, follow your fabric. All right, we're ready to take this back to the sewing machine. We're going to start probably right here by this blue mark. We're going to stitch all the way around and stop at this blue mark. Okay, I'm back at the sewing machine, and I've changed my thread color back to white. You can use whatever color you want. This thread shouldn't show any unless you kind of pull on your seam. And I'm going to stitch about 3/8 of an inch from the edge. That means leaving a little hair on this side of your presser foot. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to make sure and catch all this terry cloth, and it's a little thicker, and so sometimes it's harder to catch it all. So we need to put our stitch back to a straight stitch. And I'm going up to a 3 in length because of the thickness of the terry cloth. It'll kind of bunch if you go too tight. Okay, let's sew around this now. Now that we've got it sewn, we need to clip the curves all the way around the curves. You don't have to clip on any flat surfaces or flat straight line seaming. But we do need to clip the curves so it will lay in there and not bulge. But I prefer, rather than clipping, I prefer to use my pinking shears and just cut fairly close to the seam. And this will have the same effect. And I just think it's easier and neater in the end. It lays smoother. So I'm going to go around this and clip it. I don't really need to on the ends, but I am since I'm going. We do not want to clip it, though, at the place that we left it unsewn, left it open, because that will make it too short to fold in, and we want to leave that. Okay, now that we've got it all clipped, let's go back over to the ironing board and turn it right side out and iron it. Now we want to turn it right side out through the hole. Make sure my iron's heated. Now I like to use either a pin or my seam ripper to kind of help pull out some of the places, but you have to be very, very careful with the seam ripper and just kind of catch it in there, because you can cut your fabric with it if you push too hard. I'm just using the point on it, so probably a point on a pin would be better. See some of these spots that aren't pulled completely out. It just kind of helps to give them a tug with something pointed. So we want to make sure it's all turned out all the way around. And here's where we left it open to turn it. So we're going to just kind of fold both pieces of fabric in like that, and I'm going to iron that. Got a place here that needs pulling out a little bit more, I think. And of course my iron is not hot. I have to figure out how to make it stay on a little bit longer. But I want to give it a good steam before I go. Oh, I shut it off. I guess it was on. There we go. A little bit of operator error there. Now, we're going to take it back to the machine and top stitch all the way around, and that will close this seam. And we want it pretty close, about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. So let me just run over there and do that, and I'll bring it right back. Okay, I'm back. I've got my top stitching done, if you can see that. The reason we stay close to the edge is if we went too far in, it would not close the seam where we left it open. Now, I'm going to steam it a little bit more because every time you put a seam in it, it kind of goes out of shape just slightly. And now we have this wonderful burp rag to gift to some baby in our life. Okay, thank you for watching. I would appreciate it if you would like this video and subscribe to my channel. I need some more subscribers. I'm getting really good viewing times, but I could use a few more subscribers. So I appreciate you. And remember, whatever you do, do to the glory of the Lord. And we will see you next time. Our next project is going to be the same burp rag. We're on Wednesday, but we're going to learn how to set some trim in the seam, so you can set a little ruffle or rickrack or anything that sticks out in the seam. So that's going to be our advanced step. All right, thank you.